Hello everyone, back to today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather next week, 10 days. For today's second video, this takes us into the opening days of March. So, I'm sure you've been watching the videos lately, you know what's going on. We've got the cold weather coming up over the next few days. It's going to get a little bit colder day by day through the rest of this week, but it's really at the end of the weekend, and particularly into the start of next week, that those bitterly cold easterly winds will start to feed in. And I think the broad pattern is pretty much locked in now that we are going to get this Scandinavian high. We are going to get the wind into the east starting in the coming days and getting colder into next week. The question now is beginning to start thinking about the detail. How cold is it going to get? And also starting to think a bit about snow. Now, we won't be able to give you any sort of firm detail on that for a few more days. But I certainly would expect that by the weekend, there'll be some snow watches starting to appear about all of this. I know a few of you have already been checking out the Snow Watch page, because I can see that through the data that we have from Gazo to see which pages people are looking at. I know a few of you have looked into Snow Watch, but nothing's happening there at the moment because it's too far away to be able to issue any sort of guidance about snow, other than talking in very general terms that because it's going to be cold, wind's going to be in from the east, there will be the chance of snow in places, but it's much too far away to have any sort of certainty about that. So Snow Watch probably starts around maybe Friday, but I would suspect more likely over the weekend. But that's sort of the direction we're going in now, because I think we have got the pattern largely sorted out for next week, which is that high pressure will be dominating. But we've got to nail down the exact position of that high pressure, because it is crucial as to how much cold air we feed in from the east. Do we just have a general UK cold spell? I think that's unlikely. Or do we have a very severe spell of weather at the other end of the spectrum? And whilst that is a possibility, I would suspect we'll get something in between the two sort of extremes. So I think we will be colder than normal next week, colder than a normal UK cold spell, I should say. But I suspect we probably won't go to that very extreme level. Famous last words. But I think we perhaps we're not going to that very extreme cold level of temperature, but it is a possibility that we might do, so that's why this is causing so much interest at the moment. The stats for the videos and the website have been absolutely through the roof over the last few days, so I know there is a huge amount of interest about this. So I'll bring you up to date with the very latest. It's all still on course generally, just a little bit of a detail has changed slightly. So I'm going to bring you up to date with everything that's going on. Start off having a look at the central England temperature. And this is the latest from Hadley. We are currently standing at 4.0. Actually, would you believe, we've gone a little bit milder than average, just 0.4 of a degree above average provisional up to yesterday. I suspect that's as high as it's going to get, and the coming days will see this very gradually inching down initially, and then next week I suspect that will do a little bit of a plunge. I think we are going to come out with a substantially colder than average month. It will just depend how cold we are. Are we around about half a degree, 0.5 a degree below average, or are we colder than that, say up to a degree colder than average? That's all to be determined by how cold it gets through the course of next week. Just a quick look at the stratosphere. So I said yesterday we have had a second warming, or we did have a second warming of the stratosphere at 30 HPA. That was it just there. We're now beginning to shift down a little bit once again, so that second warming of the stratosphere at 30 HPA over North Pole is beginning to edge down, although we wait to see what the effects of this could be, because actually at the moment we're dealing with the effects from the first stratospheric warming, this one that occurred just here. So that's what's causing, or partly anyway, what's causing the blocking and the Scandinavian high that we're dealing with in the coming days. We don't yet know if we will have any effect from this second warming that happened yesterday and the day before. We shall wait and see. That is starting to edge down now, and I don't think there's going to be any more stratospheric warmings in the foreseeable future. This is from the University of Berlin website, from the ECM WF model. Again, this is looking at 30 HPA. That black cross just there is the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere. over the Arctic. This is the situation right now, so again, substantially warmer than average at 30 HPA. But coming days sees that beginning to just lower down a little bit. So this is how things are forecast by the ECMWF model at 96 hours. Notice light blues beginning to appear. That's telling us that the temperature is going back down to more what you'd expect really for this point of the year at that level of the stratosphere. That's a week away. Again, temperature just lowering down, but still above average, even in a week's time. Still warmer than average, really. That's how it's looking as we get through to day 10. So again, the blue colours are expanding. They are pale blue colours, so we're not talking about going to a very cold level of stratospheric temperatures. Very gradually, the temperature will start to lower from these two substantial sudden stratospheric warmings that we've had over the past few days, over the past week to 10 days or so. I doubt we'll look at the stratosphere much more. Now it's all about what the effects of the stratospheric warmings are going to be. So this is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. We've got the black line here telling us where we've been with the Arctic oscillation, red lines at the end. The GFS ensemble is forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. It's an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. When the Arctic oscillation is positive, you've got low pressure over the pole. You're strengthening westerlies through mid-latitudes. And in winter, a positive AO is typically a signal for mild weather for the UK and for Europe. When the Arctic oscillation goes negative, you've got high pressure over the pole. You've got blocking over pole. Remember, it's always the weather that's driving the index. So because you've got the blocking and the high pressure over pole, that sends the Arctic oscillation index negative. And this is what the GFS ensembles are forecasting. We're starting off just there. So round neutral really, but the coming days, look at that big drop in the Arctic oscillation forecast to take place, so that by the time we get through to the start of March, the Arctic oscillation is at a very negative level indeed, telling us there will be a lot of blocking to be had. As we go through the first week of March, a little bit of a split. Some of the ensemble members are trying to lift the Arctic oscillation back up towards neutral. Some of them are keeping the Arctic oscillation at that very negative level, keeping that blocking extending out through the first week of March. The only thing I'd say about that is that do keep in mind, when you have blocking over the Arctic and over Greenland and over the northern latitudes, the models will always try to, and these indexes are model based, the models will always try to revert back to the default pattern. So they'll always try to eliminate the blocking and return you to your default pattern. For us, the default pattern is westerlies and southwesterlies and mild Atlantic-driven weather. So very often they will do that much too quickly. They'll be too progressive in eliminating the blocking and returning things back to where the model thinks it should be, back to the default setup. So always have to keep that in mind when you get into a blocked setup. Now, same is true for the North Atlantic oscillation as well. So again, this is the observed and forecast chart. Black line here tells us where we've been with the NAO. Red lines at the end where GFS ensemble is forecasting the NAO to go. We're starting positive with the NAO. We've been positive with it pretty much since the first day of December. You have to go back to November to find the NAO in negative territory. GFS ensembles are all forecasting the North Atlantic oscillation to go down into negative territory, really very negative by the time you get through to the start of March. Then through the first week of March, they are trying to lift the North Atlantic oscillation back closer to neutral, albeit still on the negative side, but trying to reduce the blocking signal and try to revert back to the default setup, reintroduce the westerlies through that first week of March. That may be what happens. We may get rid of the blocking very quickly. I'll be surprised if we do somehow. And my guess is that they are being too progressive in trying to bring these westerlies back. But let's wait and see. We've got plenty to be going on with before we have to worry about that in any case. These are the GFS ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Crowborough today. Somebody has asked me to look at that in, I believe it's East Sussex. So this is the upper air temperature ensemble from a GFS model for Crowborough. Starting off quite cold already. It does feel pretty chilly out there, I have to say. It's going to get a little bit less cold as we start the weekend. Just seeing the temperature beginning to edge up ever so slightly, although that's with a freshening easterly wind. So despite that, the upper air temperature does lift up just briefly on Saturday. Actually, I think it'll feel really quite cold by Saturday in most easterly winds. Then after that, still the idea that we get this plunge in the temperature taking place as we go through into the start of next week. So GFS ensembles are somewhere between -10 and -15 at 850 HPA. A few more of the ensemble members are perhaps more towards -10 than -15. It's about a 50-50 split, I think. But yesterday, virtually all ensemble members were going down to around -15 at 850 HPA. Now the GFS ensembles are just easing that back a little bit. And that's what I'm talking about at the start of the video. I've got to firm up on the exact position of the high pressure. And we will get cold air in. But just how cold is the air going to be that we get in from the east? That's what we've got to start firming up on. Now that the broad pattern, which is for the Scandinavian high to be dominating, now that that's, I think it's pretty much sorted out. So now we've got to work out the exact detail. A few of those ensembles are just lifting off that very extreme sort of cold -15 level. -10 is plenty cold enough at 850 HPA and would certainly be enough to be producing snow in any precipitation happens to fall from the sky. Beyond that, so we go into the first week of March. Let's just get rid of all that. This first week of March just here. And generally, the GFS ensembles are still more or less on the cold side until the very, very end, going into the second week of March. Do see a little bit of a lift up then. But overall, I think through the first week of March, GFS ensembles are still pretty much set on cold weather. And some of those ensemble members are still very cold, actually, going right the way through the first week of March. For precipitation, it's basically dry through to the weekend. Start of next week and through next week, sees some precipitation spikes gradually returning more and more. A lot of those are going to be producing snow, especially with this very low level of temperature just here. Surface temperatures are looking like that. Again, this is for Crowborough, so we're starting off just there, quite chilly. We see the temperature edging down through the next few days. We get into the start of next week, and basically we're hovering around freezing all day with some very cold nights indeed. Then second half of next week, just trying to begin to lift those temperatures up, but it's not until we get through to the second week of March that we do see a little bit of a warming trend. Although, again, there's a big split there, so they're the warmest ensemble members, but we have got a lot of very cold ensemble members too. And as I say, these models will often be too progressive in returning back to the default setup. Temperature anomalies, look at that for Europe for the coming week. This is from the 21st of February to the 1st of March, and all parts of Europe are coming out really significantly colder than average. Look how cold it is over in Russia. We've got temperature anomalies there going down below -10. Of course, that's very cold at this time of year anyway. But I mean, France and Germany and Holland, Belgium, we're going down with a temperature anomaly to between 6 and 8 degrees below average. Spain and Portugal going down between 2 and 4 degrees below average. The UK, I think we're generally around 4 degrees below average as well. Ireland coming out a couple of degrees below average. Scandinavia coming out generally between around 6 to 8 degrees colder than average. So most of Europe is going to be plunged into the freezer over the coming week. That looks very, very much on the cards. That's going to be a big freeze across most of Europe in the week ahead. Of course, if it's colder, it'll often be drier, so the precipitation anomaly from the 21st of February through to the 1st of March is coming out substantially drier than average. Notice for the UK, quite interesting, that western parts of the UK coming out with very dry precipitation anomalies, nearer to normal over in the east, and what that's picking up on is snow showers coming in with those easterly winds onto the eastern side, and that's something that you do get a lot with very cold temperatures and easterly winds, that you'll pick up snow showers in the east, whereas the west, where you're sheltered from those easterly winds, will tend to have the driest of the weather. Right, let's bring you an update with model runs then. So this is the GFS midnight run. We've got high pressure in over Scandinavia on Sunday. The wind's turning directly into the east. That easterly wind continues into Monday, into Tuesday. The Scandinavian high is dominant. A little bit of a ridge edging down into Scotland. Keeps the very coldest of the air at bay for them. But for England and Wales, there's nothing to stop those bitterly cold temperatures feeding in from the east. And then that continues up to a week's time. This is Wednesday the 28th of February. Proper long fetch easy wind in across England and Wales. That looks very cold indeed. Following the ice bars back, the air is originating from that sort of area, and so that's bringing in really cold upper air temperatures. There are the upper air temperatures for a week's time. They look very, very cold indeed. Look how cold it is across most parts of northern and central Europe, and we are bringing that bitterly cold air in across the UK as well. Thursday next week we start to edge trough down from the north, so that's bringing a band of snow southwards across the country. That's developing into some sort of area of low pressure there, so that could be a snow event moving southwards across the country Thursday to Friday next week. Much too far away to have any confidence in it. Just a suggestion that later on next week we perhaps pick up a more general spell of snow across the country. Upper air temperatures are still cold. Not as cold because we're bringing that trough through the country, which does lift the upper air temperatures up a little bit, but certainly doesn't lift them up enough to prevent snow. And then we go through to day 10, which is Saturday 3rd of March, and essentially we're still looking very cold at that point. We've got the Greenland high pressure gone to Greenland by this point. Remember, it starts off over Scandinavia at the beginning of the week, but by the end of next week it's firmly rooted over Greenland, so retrogression has taken place. That always tells you that something quite unusual is happening in the atmosphere. Remember retrogression, I'll just explain that. Retrogression is when you take pressure from east to west, which goes against the normal zonal flow. The zonal flow and the default flow for the Atlantic and Europe is west to east in that direction. When you get retrogression, you are going against the zonal flow. That tells you that the atmosphere is doing something unusual and things aren't working as they are expected to. And we've had that through the course of next week. So retrogression has taken the high pressure from Scandinavia to Greenland. And so we're at that point at day 10, we still look pretty much locked in to very cold weather. Beyond that, it stays cold into extended range. Eventually, we start to bring low pressure back in off the Atlantic by the time you get through to the second week of March. Notice the blocking is reducing quickly over Greenland. That may be what happens, but I'll be surprised if we reduce that blocking signal as quickly as that. This 6 o'clock run of the GFS model. So again, we've got high pressure over Scandinavia on Sunday. There comes the easterly winds. The easterly winds push through the country through the early part of next week. There's the upper air temperatures by Tuesday. We're all looking bitterly cold and especially focused on England and Wales. We keep those bitterly cold easterly winds going through to Wednesday. There are kinks in the isobars. There's a kink just there. There's another kink just here. And there's some sort of low pressure that's lurking close to the southeast of England. That just tells us that along these easterly winds, there will be disturbances. Troughs within the flow could develop and just enhance the snow shower risk. And that's particularly so for eastern parts of the country. That takes us up to Thursday, the 1st of March. Look what's happening then. We have got an area of low pressure beginning to develop off the eastern coast of Scotland, just there. Again, the high pressure's retrogressed from Scandinavia to Greenland. We're bringing in that very, very cold easterly wind, bitterly cold easterly winds feeding in. There's the upper air temperatures. They're looking very cold indeed. Deep freeze across most parts of Europe, and that very cold air is getting into the UK. Now, that little low pressure that was off the east coast of Scotland by midnight on Friday, that's sinking down over the UK. So this is 2 runs that is suggesting there could be some sort of significant snow event from an area of low pressure. This is separate to the snow showers and the troughs that may come in earlier in the week with those easterly winds. This is a snow event caused by an area of low pressure moving down from the north. And that actually turns into quite a major feature on this 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So by 6 o'clock next Friday, that low pressure is over England and Wales, bringing heavy snow. That would be a real snow event across many parts of the country through the second half of next week. It's way too far out to have any confidence in, so that's the reason I won't be doing a snow wash about it. But it's of interest that the GFS has been forecasting this in 2 runs now, this area of low pressure. That's how we finish up at day 10. Still looking very cold. We've still got the blocking over Greenland. The jet stream is down here, by the way, where that black line is. So that's going down into Spain and almost into North Africa. So it's a very abnormal sort of setup that we have by day 10. And of course, we might reduce that cold weather quickly, might get rid of blocking very quickly, but I would be surprised if we get out of that within a few days. I would suspect that extends out longer than the models are currently predicting. ECMWF, easterly winds in for Sunday, and then they continue into the early part of next week as well. Again, the ECMWF is just placing this ridge a little bit further south than all other models. I'm not sure why it's doing it, but most of the models have the high pressure starting around there and then going to around there. The ECMWF keeps placing this ridge to the south of Iceland, which means the very coldest of the air is generally passing to our south and southeast. And it may be right on that. I'm not sure why, if it is right, why the other models aren't doing the same. In any case, we still look very cold by the middle of next week with -10 isotherm through the country. Then we start taking that high pressure up towards Greenland at the second half of next week, and we bring a weather front down across the country. That's bringing a band of snow. That's how we finish up at day 10, which is Saturday the 3rd of March, and I think there's a snow event going on across the country then. There's a weather front that's pushing down. Or I should go that way. There's a weather front that's pushing down there. And we've still got the blocking around Greenland and Iceland. So we remain, and it looks like we would stay, very cold beyond day 10. Finally, the GEM. So the easterly winds begin over the weekend. They strengthen through the course of next week. Notice the GEM, similar to the GFS, has that low pressure further north, a high pressure, I should say, further north compared to the ECMWF. It's up here rather than being centred around there. That's where the ECM has it, but the GFS has it up there. And so we get a direct hit from those bitterly cold easterly winds. Look at the upper air temperatures for the middle of next week with the GEM. They look very, very cold, and things just stay really cold and wintry into the second half of next week. We do push the -15 Celsius isotherm right way across England and Wales there. GEM has perhaps been the most consistent in bringing this very severely cold air in from the east next week. The other two are kind of wavering about it and differing from run to run, but the GEM has been the most consistent of the two. It could be that it's the most consistently wrong, but that looks severe, so there is still the chance that we might get a severe spell of weather next week. As it is, it's going to be cold to very cold. It still could get quite seriously cold if the GEM and perhaps the 6 o'clock run of the GFS is correct. That's how we finish up at day 10. Still looking pretty much locked in to cold weather on Saturday the 3rd of March. So that's brought you up to date with all the developments. Basically, it's all still on course. It's just a matter of firming up on the detail. Now, we're going to get some sort of cold, perhaps very cold spell of weather through the course of next week. There are snow potential, there is snow potential appearing increasingly with these model runs as well through the course of next week, whether it's the snow showers and the troughs with the easy winds early in the week, or maybe that more general area of low pressure bringing significant snow in the second half next week. So that's all beginning to edge towards the chance of significant snow. And we're looking at a range with the temperatures either just typically cold weather, really, which is what the ECMWF would do, so not particularly severe, to up the other extreme of the GEM, which is actually quite severely cold through next week. I suspect we'll be somewhere in between, which is about where the GFS is. So colder than you would normally get in the UK, perhaps not quite going to the severe cold end, and so you would say that's like a very cold spell of weather with the risk of substantial snow too. And at nearly 25 minutes, that's brought you up to date with all of the developments. I hope you found it interesting and informative. We'll probably run through the midday runs of the models tonight, so come back for that a little bit later on. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.